going to start this video by showing a U.S. patent published in 2009 by the company C-REIT LLC. That's C-S-E-A REIT. C as in marine. The name of this patent is Water Alteration Structure Applications and Methods. I posted this one along with a link to some other of C-REIT's patents on my community tab a couple days ago. I'll go over some of the other patents at the end of this video by this company because people should understand what these people are into, because they're into some very concerning technology. But this patent relates to hurricanes specifically and also to maritime law, which I'm taking an interest in lately. My last few videos have touched on that, and I'm in the process of learning about it. This is a reminder that Serco, the British Crown Corporation, who Winston Churchill, the Druid's grandson, was CEO of until 2023. And Serco is the company who manages all U.S. patents. I covered this in my last video titled Crown Corporation Part 2. So this patent says it includes environmental alteration. It says the method includes determining the placement of at least one vessel capable of moving water to lower depths in the water via wave-induced downwelling. The method includes generating movement of water adjacent to the surface of the water in response to the placing. And this is just what the patent looks like, a well. Here's the ocean, so it looks like a well. This slide shows you the placement, which is in the Gulf, which is where the recent hurricanes have been originating. So my friend sent me this, and she highlighted some areas. This says, place the vessel and generate movement of the surface water. It says hurricane intensity modulation using wireless communication links. This says, because hurricanes drive energy from warm ocean water, it's logical to harness the great energies of the Earth's fluid envelopes to suppress or alter hurricanes and to employ the powers of motion within these envelopes over long time intervals to modulate at least one property of the envelope that is exploited over a much shorter time and much more limited space for energizing a hurricane. It says once done, the vessel could sink or be sunk, where it could subsequently degrade at a subsurface location. And they say they anchor at least one vessel to the bottom of the water body or to a sea anchor. So that's the patent. So now let's look at maritime law, because maritime law would be the law that would have jurisdiction over this type of vessel. Maritime law is law that governs nautical issues and maritime disputes. Domestic law on maritime activities and private international law governing the relationships between private parties operating or using ocean-going vessels. It's distinguished from the law of the sea, which is a body of public international law dealing with navigational rights, mineral rights, jurisdiction over coastal waters, and the maritime relationships between nations. The UN law of the sea has been adopted by 167 countries in the EU. So, Serco is supposedly a privately owned company, but they also operate ships. We saw that in my last video. They provide that to the government, but they're supposedly a private company. But of course, it's Crown Corporation. We talked about that before. But regarding hurricanes, and specifically Hurricane Milton, the one that was advertised so much recently, people have suggested there's a correlation between Milton, the hurricane, and John Milton, the British poet who wrote the poem Paradise Lost, and John Milton in the movie The Devil's Advocate. So John Milton was the name given to Satan's character played by Al Pacino in the movie. The name John Milton is one of several allusions to Paradise Lost in the movie, as well as Dante's Inferno and The Legend of Faust. So Al Pacino plays a very convincing Satan, Milton. He's the owner of a Manhattan law firm who is into everything: money laundering, arms dealing, drug running, and murder, and maritime law. So that movie may be predictive programming for Hurricane Milton. It's definitely a significant movie because of the Trump references, which I'm not going to go over because most people are already aware of those. But there are potential references to where Hurricane Milton made landfall in maritime law. So the first reference is Tampa, or St. Petersburg, which is right off the coast of Tampa. It's right there in the bay. So on Milton's, aka Satan's, desk in his office is a statuette, and this is it. It's called The Doctor. It's from a series of statuettes and paintings called Carnival at St. Petersburg. That's the name of the art series, Carnival at St. Petersburg. And the statuette is the only thing to note in a sparse desk in an otherwise empty stone wall round room. That's Milton's or Satan's office. And they zoom in on this statue and they leave the camera shot on it for an inordinately long amount of time for focus. So anytime they focus on something like that, you know for sure that it's done intentionally and it has significant symbolic meaning. So the Russian sculptor of this statuette is Mikhail Chemyakin, and he is Order of the Red Banner. So he's in the club. And this is where St. Petersburg is, you see. This is Tampa, and this is the bay, and this is where the hurricane came in, right there. So there's a carnival in St. Petersburg in Russia, but there's also a carnival in St. Petersburg, Florida, which is essentially right here in Tampa. See, right here, St. Petersburg. And I'll just show you some other of the, this is the carnival in Tampa. So there's a carnival in St. Petersburg, but there's also this one in Tampa. It's a famous carnival. Maybe modeled after the one in St. Petersburg, Russia. This is just some of the other surrealist art done by the same Russian artist in the series, Carnival at St. Petersburg. And you can see they have like imperial type characters, but they're demonic, and these are like the statuettes that are part of it. But Keanu Reeves plays Kevin, who is the aspiring lawyer and bastard son of Milton, aka Satan, and he's also from Gainesville, Florida, which is north of Orlando, so also in the path of the hurricane. But the second reference is maritime law. This is a quote from Satan, aka Milton. He says, "The law puts us into everything. It's the new priesthood." The law puts us into everything. It's the new priesthood. It's an old priesthood too. But anyway, the name of Milton, aka Satan's law firm, is Milton, Chadwick, and Waters. Milton is obviously named after Milton, and Chadwick is definitely a reference to London, which is where John Milton, the poet, was born, and where a lot of this stuff is born out of. But Waters, though, what's that about? Well, I can't help but think about maritime law, and I've been thinking about it a lot lately with the NOAA and the Merchant Navy research that I've been doing, and especially with that patent, which would definitely fall under the jurisdiction of maritime law. One of the head attorneys in Milton, Chadwick, and Waters is head of maritime law for the firm, and they make a pertinent point to call him out as head of maritime law. Additionally, Kevin, the aspiring lawyer who's having a crisis of conscience, is the son of Milton / Satan in his daylight hallucination. He wins a case in Florida before he moves to Manhattan in his hallucination. And to celebrate the Florida case, he goes to this bar. to celebrate. And this is where he's approached to come work for Milton, Chadwick, and Waters. And the bar is decked all out in ropes, like a ship. And I know it's Florida, but there are tons of ropes in this place. They're everywhere. Seems intentional and overkill, and I doubt this is literally in the bar where they filmed this, because that would be dangerous, I would think. So, in the movie, Milton / Satan says that he builds egos the size of cathedrals. Cathedrals are Gothic architecture, and there's a lot of Gothic architecture in the movie. The author of the book that the movie was adapted from is an author of Gothic fiction. And Gothic cathedrals and architecture is not exactly a hurricane reference, but it sort of is, because Gothic architecture is dragon, court, knights, templar, vampire architecture, and they are the ones at the tip-top of the chain, including making sure that these storms are created and steered in the right direction, if you read Gary Wayne regarding who's running everything at the top. So I want to talk about all the Gothic architecture in this movie. The courthouse is the municipal building, and it's got Gothic architecture. You see these archways here. Very Gothic styled, that building, with fallen angel statue at the top, which they highlight at the very beginning of the movie. And there are Gothic churches in the movie as well. Church of Heavenly Rest and the Holy Redeemer Church, which is the one that was used for the holy water boiling scene at the funeral. Carnegie Hill is where all the partners of the law firm live, including Milton, aka Satan, and the architecture of the neighborhood is Gothic styled. It's named after Andrew Carnegie, who had a mansion there, Carnegie of steel industry fame, and Trump has an association with the Carnegies. I think his mother said she worked for them when she came to America from Scotland. That's the claim. So, Milton's apartment is the penthouse in Carnegie Hill, in the building they live in. And in the middle of the floor of his penthouse is a sacred geometry tile inlay. And this is it right here at the bottom. Looks like a rose window. He also has the Masonic black and white chess floor and things on the wall that look like coffins, which you can't really see here. But the sculpture, the large sculpture here on the wall, is supposed to be a replica of Ex Nihilo, which was sculpted by Frederick Hart in the Washington National Cathedral, which is a Gothic-styled cathedral in Washington, D.C. This one. So, this is not a reference to Hurricane Milton and maritime law, but I want to mention the inclusion of African witchcraft in this movie. Kevin's first Manhattan case with the firm, which at first he's led to believe is just a health code case or a test, but as it turns out, the defendant is very significant, Philippe Moyes. And Philippe is a wealthy African witch, but he has a French accent, and he's doing animal sacrifice underground in Manhattan, and he calls this spiritual currency. Apparently, African witches are powerful in real life, especially if they're born into a powerful tribe. And in the movie, Philippe does some sort of ritual with a tongue, like a cow tongue or something like that, against the DA who's prosecuting, saying, "With this tongue we create silence." And during the trial, the DA gets all choked up, so the witchcraft worked, and Philippe got off. And during the trial, Reeves argues religious constitutional rights, which I think is a foreshadowing of how things will go here in the future. Like all the satanic religions have rights, but not those who follow Jesus. In the movie, Milton, aka Satan, wants Kevin to sleep with his own sister, Christabella, saying that his seed is the key to the future, Kevin's seed, and he says he will sit at all tables. So they're referencing the Antichrist. And Milton, aka Satan, actually says that he needs this because the millennium is coming soon. And that movie was released in 1997. Milton also references the number of convictions that Kevin got when he was a prosecutor, which is 64. Milton says 64, what a number. And some sources say that he is referencing the age at which John Milton, the famous English poet, died. But 64 has occult meanings also, and I don't want to get too much into that, but it's 8 by 8. And it also has to do with the cosmos and the end of the world. And it's also the number of squares on a chessboard. Some of the quotes from Milton are, split atoms with desire, or these are things that he said that are going to be happening in the 21st century. So he says, splitting atoms with desire, fiber optically connecting the world to every eager impulse. The bee's honey takes on the metallic taste of radioactivity. And I mentioned that because of the patents that I'm going to go over at the end of this video. So the movie ends with Painted Black by the Rolling Stones, and as I've said before, Mick Jagger is Order of the British Empire, a Tavistock creation funded by the Venetian black nobility. And now I'm just going to play a little bit of this where it shows him worshiping the devil in his video, which is a Tavistock funded propaganda video for Sympathy for the Devil released in 1960s. Alright, enough of that. But those lyrics of that song, Sympathy for the Devil, also even included St. Petersburg. And it's a carnival theme in the video. John Lennon was in the audience of the video, and he's also a druid dude, at least that's what he sang in his song Mind Games, saying he was a druid dude lifting the veil. Druid dude like Winston Churchill. So they're all in this together. You know, last September, Macron hosted a dinner at Versailles, the palace of Louis the 13th, the Sun King, who was, or the 14th, the Sun King, who was featured as Apollo during his life, and also at the Paris Olympics recently. But Mick Jagger was there, and this is an article about it. And also King Charles III was there, and he gave a speech. So they're all in it together, you see. And you may think that these things that I'm covering are unrelated, but they aren't. They aren't unrelated. So back to CSEA REIT, the company with the hurricane patent. Here are some of the other patents that they are involved in. C-REIT, LLC. This one is registering a region of interest of a body part to a landmark subsurface feature of the body part. It says, in an embodiment, a system is disclosed. The system includes a receiver circuit configured to receive at least 2 images. At least one of the images includes a region of interest of a mammalian body part. The system further includes a registration circuit configured to register at least one of the regions of interest of a mammalian body part or a landmark surface or subsurface feature of the mammalian body part having a spatial relationship to the region of interest. The system also includes a computer-readable media configured to maintain informational data corresponding to the registration of at least one of the region of interest of the mammalian body part or the landmark subsurface feature of the mammalian body part. And I'm going to go through some of these. I'm not going to read the abstracts on all of them, but you can kind of tell, I mean, they're similar to what I just read, but I'll just read the titles. So, method, device, and system for modulating an activity of a brown adipose tissue in a vertebrate subject. And that's just like a type of fatty tissue, brown adipose. All right. 28 is system, devices, and methods for real-time monitoring of cerebrospinal fluid for markers of progressive conditions, which they're progressive conditions, apparently they're saying is mental disorders. Identifying a characteristic of an individual utilizing facial recognition and providing display for the individual. Tracking identities of persons using microimpulse radar. Surveillance of stress conditions of persons using micro-impulse radar. Get down in here into the 50s. Hold on. MHC-less cells. This present disclosure relates to compositions, methods, systems, computer implemented methods, and computer program products thereof that relate to biological cells for delivery of at least one therapeutic agent to a biological tissue or subject. Micro-impulse radar detection of human demographic and delivery of targeted media content. That's a micro-impulse radar may be configured to provide information about at least one person in a region. A media output device may be driven responsive to the information to output media content to at least one person. Media output with micro-impulse radar. Feedback of physiological response. A system and method for providing media and advertising content determines content and/or parameters responsive to physical and/or physiological information about a viewer detected by micro-impulse radar. Thanks for listening.